Today we're talking about the gamification of war. There's a lot of people who like to sit around and they play war games, shooting people and all that kind of stuff. And I'm not even going to tell you that there's anything wrong with that. I like me a good match, a World of Warships or something like that. But I've always thought that there's a certain type of game that attracts a certain sort of people that is different, like Call of Duty sort of games. Those first person shooter games where you're jumping into this sort of adrenaline um, pumping action in a live arena with other people, and it somehow is not so strategic, and it's more about creating this sense of um, I guess self validation. It's sort of a kind of weird to say this, but it's kind of a macho thing almost. Like people, they role play that they are a badass guy with a gun going in, killing people, and it gives them some sort of a high in a really kind of a questionable way, an almost animalistic way. But then the irony of this is it's just some fat dude sitting in front of his TV with an Xbox being macho while he sits there with his Cheetos. Like, it's not really like this is a, alpha male at the top of the whatever pyramid of dominance or something that's really doing this. It's just some random dude. But you turn on the Xbox and you can role play that you are, the soldier of fortune or something. So all of this is fine. Like, no big deal, whatever. You want to play a video game, play a video game. I don't care. But then there's people, I guess, and I'll diverge on this. People used to say, well, video games make people violent, you know, like, and I don't believe that. I really don't. I think, I think that if you're a violent person, you are potentially going to be attracted to things that reflect your values. And so when I see people that really love something like Grand Theft Auto, where the primary purpose of the game is to allow you to role play running around stealing cars, shooting civilians, and messing around with hookers. My question is, why is it that that game is the one that appeals to you? Because the games I like to play, where I'm role playing something, are games where I might role play being a better person than you know I guess what you would role play as in Grand Theft Auto. So I do think that the sort of things that fascinate you say something about who you are. And it's also true with television shows. If you're the person, you're always turning on the show that's about people getting raped and killed and murdered, and it's gunshots and profanity, and that's the television show that you want to watch. My question again is, what is it that draws you to that type of content? Why is it that you would rather watch a TV show that is all about people getting raped and killed than a TV show that's about something more uplifting? Why is it that the uplifting show is boring and the gory, violent one is the one that you're gonna turn on? And people will say all sorts of justifications for this, but I think the bottom line is, again, you're drawn to something that reflects a portion of your unexpressed value set. And sometimes people don't have very good values, just a little below the surface. If they had unlimited power, they would not be very good people. And they don't have unlimited power, so it's not really that big of a deal. But they still express these things um, in the form of the video games they choose and the entertainment they choose, etc., etc. Anyway, what I was thinking about that prompted me to make this video is all this stuff going on with war overseas and the war in Europe and the different attitudes people have toward that. And I can't help noticing that there's a certain subset of people, and they seem to be people who are probably a bit more, I guess, progressive, liberal sort of people. And, actually, I think it's kind of funny because these are the same people who, if I recall correctly, in the past, traditionally were the folks who you would expect to see, waving a peace flag and being all about, anti-war and stuff like that. But lately, with all of the stuff going on in Europe, now suddenly we have all these folks, and I start to see on message boards and things that look a lot like hate, and they look a lot like kind of the same sort of thing that makes people get pumped up about video games and celebrate killing people in you know Call of Duty or something. You see people and they've got the Ukraine flag up there on their Facebook profile, and they're all about these progressive virtue signals. And then you see something in the news about, I guess a bunch of Russians getting killed or something. And then there's all these things of people just celebrating this, being so excited and making jokes and saying, how awesome it is, like, okay, that's great. Nothing more awesome and funny than a bunch of dead Russians, right? Well, okay. I mean, I'm not talking about, the morality of war. I'm just saying, what is it that gets people off and makes them all excited? And I'm starting to see this trend that people look at the war like a real war where people are dying, people who aren't going to ever see their families again, right? And they start looking at this and they have the same basic attitude that they would have toward a video game. And the reason for this is because you have all these people who aren't, not putting any skin into the game. They're not fighting. They're not going to be going without their needs being met. They're going to be playing their video games. They're going to be doing whatever it is they feel like doing. They're going to be going to their jobs and slacking off like they normally do on a Tuesday. And then they're going to go and they're going to virtue signal about a real conflict. And the only actual exposure to conflict that they've had in their life is that Call of Duty sort of thing. So I'm not saying that video games create violence. I think that that's itself a misnomer. But I do think that partially due to the role that entertainment, video games, all of these kind of fake things have in people's consciousness, we are starting to have a detached view on the part of a lot of people who don't have any idea what real war is all about. They that are weighing in on these things and impressing a really toxic attitude onto a serious topic. The truth is, we should never celebrate doing harm to other people. And I don't care what side of the fence you're on, if you think it's cool and funny when a bunch of people die, there's something wrong with you. And furthermore, if you think that celebrating human suffering is a progressive thing or something that aligns well with pragmatic liberalism, you are totally off your rocker. Now, I remember when I was younger and I was a little bit more liberal myself, when the United States was making its way into places like Afghanistan and Iraq after 9/11, all of the young leftists were anti-war. We were saying, this is wrong. So when I see people who identify with the left now celebrating the ongoing progression of conflict because they think it's extremely important that their side wins, I don't see that as any better than the very principle that we're supposedly opposing. Where you stand on global political issues, that's not what this video is about. But it is important to understand that real life is more serious than a video game. And it's more in depth than what you put on your social media profile. So if you aren't there, if you aren't involved, if you're not actually making sacrifices in some way, and your opinions about a lot of things should probably be relatively muted, and you should be respectful. And when it comes to things like the tragic loss of life, it's extremely important that we understand that regardless of what side of a conflict people are on, death and human suffering are tragic things, and it's never okay to make fun of those or to make light of them, or certainly it's not okay to celebrate them. Anyway, that's just my thought this morning because I was sitting there looking at some some crazy comments that were out there on a Reddit, and I thought, that's what I'm going to talk about this morning. Till next time, thank you.